Hello, welcome back to the Edge of the Box podcast, a podcast by WhoScored.com. I'm your host, Dan Bardell, delighted to be joined again by Rachel Corsie, and I'm sure she's absolutely delighted to be asked to preview the Women's World Cup final. Of course, England have made it up against Spain on Sunday morning. Rachel, and we wore the same outfit as well, which is great for a podcast as well.
Colour coordinated.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
how are you?
I'm well, yeah. I'm well. We're back in pre-season, so it's been all go. A lot of good work done, hard work, but yeah.
So you're enjoying training, enjoying pre-season, and been enjoying the Women's World Cup as well. What have you made of the tournament overall?
It's been amazing. It still comes in waves. Obviously, the fact that Scotland didn't quite do enough to get there, but no, I think it's been incredible. And the biggest thing for me, and I've said this a few times, but I just feel this is maybe the first major tournament whereby almost the entire conversation is always about the quality of the games, the competitiveness of the games. Individual moments are brilliant. Teams doing better than a lot of people had expected. Other teams, crashing out in group stages that have had a long history of doing well. And I think these are the things that a lot of us associate with major tournaments, but probably we haven't seen as much of in the women's game. Yeah. And I think all the conversation has just been about the drama of it, and that's ultimately almost what we want, because I think it's now a product that's so good, and I think this World Cup's really lived up to that, so it's been fantastic.
Yeah, we won't talk about the absolute clown comments from Infantino today. I had absolutely no idea what's running through his mind when he opens his mouth and why he doesn't seem to have a PR team. But never mind, we will focus on the positives. Have you got like a favourite moment or a favourite goal so far?
I think there was about 4 or 5 goals in the group stage alone that I think could be given goal of the tournament. I think Panama scored a free kick against France that was from some distance out. I think that certainly is up there. I think the Caicedo goal against Germany is a special one. Just to do that in this stage, fantastic individual story. Just her story behind getting to this World Cup. But those are sort of the moments that encapsulate some of these teams' huge successes and why they progressed. So I'll go with Caicedo, because the skill, the trickery, and also the stage, doing it against a German side that have been so dominant for a long time, and a lot of really good players in that team as well. That was my favourite, I think.
It was mine as well. That was the one I was going to choose. A lovely, lovely goal. Sam Kerr obviously scored a lovely goal a few days ago as well. Ultimately didn't count for anything, but it was still an absolute rocket. Is England v Spain the final that you anticipated?
It wasn't the one I predicted, but I think a lot of people's predictions probably haven't quite worked out as they maybe thought. I think what it is probably two teams that consistently now for the last few years have shown domestically that they have, maybe some of the top players, two very strong leagues. Maybe the depth of Spanish league hasn't for so long been as strong, but they've always had that core few teams at the top end of the table, and that's obviously going to expand as the seasons come in as well. But I think you're looking at two teams there that have exceptional quality, and it should be a very good game, but equally there's almost the possibility, I suppose, as well, that they could cancel each other out. But hopefully that doesn't happen. But it is going to be certainly two teams that will be very closely matched, and I think it'll come down to hopefully not mistakes, but individual moments of brilliance to probably break one another down.
I feel like England have almost got more resilient and more resolute as it's gone. I actually don't think in many of the games they've played to their full potential. They've just got this solid defensive base that they've worked on all the way through the tournament. Barely conceded a goal from open play. I think it's just one or two that they've conceded from open play. One of the goals they conceded was a penalty. So the Lionesses have been so resolute throughout. Obviously, we always talk about in tournaments that it's not always the team that plays the best that wins. It's the one that is more of a team, and the one that is more has got that defensive structure and doesn't concede many goals. Do you think England have got to the final without playing particularly well, or is that harsh?
I think there's an argument that that they've possibly not quite reached their full potential and their full capabilities. But I totally agree. I think, and I still remember, Lucy Bronze, I'm sure, tweeted after the first game, it's about getting the results,
Yeah,
and we're
yeah.
quite happy, quite happy to, if we win 1-0, then we win 1-0, but that's a win. And, in tournament football, wins get you through. So it's valuable to have a team that's capable of doing that. I think they do have more, but equally, I think what England have shown is it's taken different players at different moments in different games to get them over the line, and I think that's equally as valuable, to not rely on the same one or two players to produce that brilliant moment. It's having the capability from lots of different areas on the pitch to be able to find that, and I think because they've shown that, the team will have grown in confidence. That will galvanise the players, and that gives you just that little bit of extra confidence. So I think England will be feeling really, really good going into this, and feeling very prepared and very comfortable with the surroundings and the pressure that comes with it.
Yeah, Serena's very good at having the right players on the pitch at the right time, isn't she? She seems to be an expert, and that was the same in the Euros, and it's been the same in this World Cup as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, me included, maybe thought that she preferred to be quite rigid. And, at the Euros, obviously, we saw her pick pretty much the same 11 right the way through, with very similar changes and kind of the one style of play. And I think this tournament's really shown that that's not the only case. She has that ability to change system. She has enough quality across the group to try different things and put people in different positions, even if the system stays the same. And so, yeah, and I think just the confidence the players get from having her as the head coach, they obviously trust that. They obviously feel that gives them an extra edge. And again, that's just another sort of, weaponry in the toolbox, I suppose, but that you have to pull on all your advantages, especially in a final, against a team that, again, is going to be very capable, because Spain, as much as they are missing 2 or 3 players, that are also players that have been involved in getting them as far as they have and bringing them up the rankings and getting them to a team of this calibre. They're filled with players that have played in big games and big finals before. So, like I say, the stage is set.
Yeah, and one advantage for England is that Lauren James returns just in time for the final. It was a bit of a lightning rod in some of the group games, actually, and then, of course, has been missing after her sending off. Do you think she comes straight back into the team, or do you think she might be an option from a bench? It's probably a 50-50 call, isn't it?
Yep, there's probably arguments both sides. I think Ella Toone was possibly, will feel a little bit hard done by, because I think all players want to start. But Sheila felt a bit disappointed that she maybe didn't feature consistently in all the games up to this point. I felt in the semi-final she was very good. She obviously got her goal, a great finish, another great goal. I think Serena will go with her. I just think there's an element of almost the emotional place you come into a game like that. And when I think about being a player, how would you go into a game coming from a semi-final to final as a player who started semi-final and scored and has that confidence, compared to a player who got sent off 2-3 games ago and now maybe feels a little bit of a different pressure. I just think the mentality and the mindset going into that game is slightly different if you're one or the other. And I think that probably means that I would think we might see Toone start again. But if she goes with Lauren James, in the 2 games we did see her, in the second and third group games, she was absolutely fantastic. And she's capable of that. But equally, I think you'll get the same as that if she comes off the bench. So maybe she becomes somebody who is used for an impact once, we're at 50, 60 minutes played.
Yeah, I think with the story of the last game, the 11 that they had on the pitch, I feel like it's the right thing to do to continue with that team, because football's all about moments, and they survived those hairy moments together and got the win ultimately together. So I kind of feel like it does need to be that same 11, and it's a hell of an option to have from the bench. Any team in the world would want to have Lauren James to turn to after 50, 60 minutes, like you said. So it's a selection dilemma, but it's a nice one, as most selection dilemmas are. Is there any key battles that you think to watch out for in this final?
I think again the midfield will be key. I actually felt in the Euros in that midfield area, even though England in the end found a way to get the result, which they're very good at, I felt for a good portion of the first 70 minutes in that game, Spain dominated. I felt Bonmati and Caldente, between the two of them, controlled that area of the pitch. So I think that'll be a challenge again, whether we see Caldente or not. And I don't feel she's been at her best. We obviously expect Pateas to be in there. And again, she, a little bit frustrated in the semi-final. So there's probably a few question marks. But centrally, that'll be a key part of the pitch as always. Kira Walsh will be in there and Spain will have to limit her. But equally, I think the way Spain play, they look to try and dominate possession. So there'll be a big shift from the England players to have to try and manage that. And when they do win the ball back, be very smart in how they sort of keep possession initially, connect those first few passes to allow themselves to create their own opportunities. I personally think Hermoso, who probably was a player that's a slightly older player for Spain, who maybe hasn't been one of the stars, not been a name that too many people have probably spoke about, I feel she's been one of their real big time players this tournament. I think she stepped up her contributions. She hasn't always been directly getting the assists, but she's almost always involved in a lot of the goals they score. She's always kind of in and around it, and I think she's had a big tournament. So again, another player for me that I think England will have, their work cut out with to deal with. She sometimes plays the 9, sometimes in the 10, but she's difficult to pick up and very intelligent. So again, I'm intrigued to see how England try and stop that and whether they prefer to be a 4 or a 3, which obviously they've chosen a lot this tournament. So I've kind of not really given you a battle there. I've kind of just talked through that.
No, I enjoyed it.
Just really, I took a little diversion, but
I do. I'm going to throw you under the bus here. Who Scored have picked out Abelera against Kira Walsh as the battle, but you're not having that, are you?
Well, I don't know how naturally they'll end up necessarily battling out in a 1v1 sense, but I do think there is an element of, they're in around that central midfield area where, ultimately controlling that part of the pitch will dictate a lot of the tempo of the game. And so in some ways, yes, I do agree, but I also think the style of Spain's play, that they don't really rely on 1v1s. It's more the combination, the coordination, the understanding of the movement, and how they move off each other, and just the awareness of the space. And because of how they play it, it's very difficult to kind of pick just 1v1s. They're not going to try and get the ball wide like England might try and do, and have Lauren Hemp go 1v1 against somebody, that type of thing. I think we'll see less of that, and I think it'll be more of teams trying to dictate play to then hopefully then create opportunities for themselves.
Who Scored have actually covered the tournament the whole way through. They've got Abelera as the player of the tournament with an average rating of 8.24 throughout the whole thing, and England's top player, maybe a little bit of a surprise, is Alex Greenwood. But actually, and you're a defender, so you know, I'm sure you're loving watching her. But
centre back union,
there's a pretty decent chance she could actually win player of the tournament, which not many people would have called beforehand.
No, you're absolutely right. I think, well, I agree. It's a position that at times is overlooked. But no, I think, again, it probably comes down to England have been that collective group. And I think Alex is someone who's played all the minutes. She's fantastic on the ball. She's very composed. England obviously have dominated play in a lot of the games, or certainly large spells. Not quite them all, but they've had large spells where they've been the team in control. And she is someone who's key to that. And, I think to have a left-sided centre-back is really valuable. I think it opens up more of the pitch, and by England having that, I think she's a huge resource. And I think she's somebody who's really stepped up. She hasn't always been in that position. She obviously spent some time in her younger years at left-back. I think she's really taken on the role at centre-back and, become a fantastic player. And I would totally agree that I think she's been one of those players that's been almost flawless throughout the tournament, and that's really difficult. And sometimes as centre back, again, when you have those types of games, you're not always the most noticed. Again, centre backs union, so I can appreciate it. But yeah, I think she's had a really good tournament and certainly been somebody who you be very difficult to fault.
There's a lot of Dutch players actually in this top 10. Alex Greenwood is the only England player that's made the top 10, which maybe perhaps, again, as you said, does show that they're not relying as much on individuals. They are that team. But yeah, she's had an excellent tournament. Little look now into the future, perhaps with Rachel Corsie, the manager. You've picked your 11 from the tournament, Rachel, and Who Scored have got one as well. So if you talk about your 11, we'll try and marry up the two and compare.
I've gone for Van Domselaar in goals, which
same.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of praise for the goalkeepers this tournament. A lot of goalkeepers have stepped up. I think I thought the Nigerian goalkeeper Nnadozie was another standout. I think she was brilliant for them, and key to some of, with the progress they made, but also some of the results they got. I thought she was exceptional, and she's a young player too, so she's certainly got a few more World Cups in her to come as well, hopefully. And then I've actually gone a 3 at the back.
Yep, same as Who Scored.
Okay.
Good.
I think I went with Ilestedt because I think Sweden, defensively were great, but at one point she might have been in there for top goal scorer. Just about every Swedish set piece, she was in and around it. But I thought she's had a good tournament. I've actually picked Claire Hunt, who's Australian centre back. And maybe, again, a little bit of bias there. I actually played with Claire when I played in Australia a few years ago. And a few years ago, she had a tough run with injuries, and it was maybe a question mark over if she would continue to play. So she's been quite a recent inclusion in the Australian team, and I just felt, given that, and I feel Australia progressed, to get to the semi-finals. For me, I know they wanted to go all the way, but I still think to get to the semi-finals is a huge achievement for them. And so I felt she was a solid contributor, started every game in that centre-back role. And then I've picked Greenwood as well.
So out the back three are the same in your team, and Who Scored? So that's good. What about the rest? I mean, to be honest, some of the Who Scored teams that we do on our podcast, I very rarely agree with the teams they come out with. So if yours is completely different, it honestly does not matter at all. What else have you got?
I think so. I've gone 5 across the midfield. I've gone, if you go sort of left to right, I guess. Karshwe, who played a bit more left back, but she's quite advanced for France. Hasegawa is kind of more of a holding midfielder, with a Spanish duo of Bonmati and Hermoso in front, and then Raso playing off the right. I think for me, when you look at players that have really stepped up this tournament, I just think all those 5 have had very, very good tournaments. They've contributed enormously to how well the team's done. Not just in goals. A lot of those players have contributed in goals, but I think I've really enjoyed seeing them play. So that's where I've gone with the midfield. How am I looking?
One the same. Hermoso, the only one in the midfield. But as I've said, it doesn't matter at all. We're more likely to go with your team, and people are more likely to agree with your team as well. Have you got a front two?
I do, and I'm going with sort of Hermoso playing as that false 9, because I don't really have a central striker here. But Miyazawa and Caicedo, again, I think really dangerous, really exciting to watch. Just any time they get on the ball, I think Miyazawa getting in behind was some of the goals she scored. It was largely team goals. She was sort of the one that finished them off. But just the timing of the movement and just the understanding of the game, I felt both of them were exceptional. And there was a few that I felt were in the mix too. I think Diane for France.
She's in the Who Scored team.
Yeah, she bagged a few goals, as you would expect. Really dangerous player, and I really enjoyed Ramirez for Colombia. I thought she looked a fantastic player. I think she didn't get on the score sheet as much as she would have liked, I'm sure. And I think when you look at Colombia's route and the teams they had to play, I thought she really, stood out as somebody that she could take the ball in, hold it up, link play. She was willing. She made runs, made things happen. So they didn't quite make it, but they were players that I thoroughly enjoyed watching this tournament.
It's quite Dutch heavy, the Who Scored team. Who Scored have enjoyed watching the Netherlands through this tournament. It appears they seem to be at the centre of everything. Yeah. They do seem to be at the centre of everything Who Scored have got here. Just to finish then, Rachel, it's been a pleasure to talk to you again. Prediction, what do you think is going to happen in this final?
I think we're going to have extra time. I think it'll be a draw after 90, and then it might just be about the magic moments and the subs off the bench. So I think it'll go to extra time. I think England might win it before we get to penalties, which I'm sure that England fans will be hoping they do. Nobody
wants to see penalties. Absolute nightmare any day of the week. Penalties, but let alone in a World Cup final. And just to finish, actually, this would be a nice note to finish on. How much of an achievement is this for England getting to this final? And obviously, if they go on to win it, it's going to be absolute bedlam.
No, it's absolutely incredible. I think it's incredible in its own right. I think it's incredible off the back of winning the Euros. I just think you can't understate how huge an achievement it's been. I think for anyone, and there's been a little bit of a joke about obviously being Scottish and having being in England, and there's been a good few jokes at training. But that aside, I think just even knowing Rach and Jordan are out there, Hannah, who was with us last season. I think just knowing players that are, now spending the next 24, 40 hours preparing for a World Cup final is absolutely phenomenal. Like that's an incredible achievement, and it deserves a recognition.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and yeah, hopefully you enjoy watching the game on Sunday morning. I'm sure you will, especially with your teammates involved as well. Thanks ever so much for coming on the pod, and if I don't speak to you again, then good luck for the new season. Obviously, I'm buzzing for you to do well for Aston Villa women in the new season as well. So yeah, good luck.
Cheers, thanks so much.